Hi, everybody. Some familiar eyes, some new eyes. Thank you for coming back for those who've been here before, and thank you for coming for the first time, for those who are here for the first time. Okay, I just need to kind of assess where we are in the conversation. So, how many people have seen either one or two of the previous videos that he was just talking about of my lectures here? How many do we have? Okay, great. And how many of you have any of you read my book at this point? Okay, so we have several. And do you have an announcement? No, she does. I thought she had an announcement. Okay, so essentially this is a 6-part series on mind control. And today is the third in that series of 6. And if you haven't seen the first 2 videos, it's not absolutely critical for today, being here today, that you've seen those. Because if I do cover some of that material, I'll kind of give you an overview before I get to that material. But it's pretty important that you see those first 2 to really understand where I'm coming from. Okay? Now, if you came here to learn about MK Ultra and subliminal advertising on the television, and or Edward Bernays and consumerism in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and oh gosh, all these other types of mind control, techniques and the beginnings and the facilitations of those, unfortunately you've come to the wrong lecture, because I won't be discussing those, because the premise that I work from, and we're just going to brush on it right now, and we talk quite extensively on the first 2 videos, is that thinking voice that you have in your head, that little voice that's talking to yourself right now as I speak, that part of your mind, if you believe that that is who you are, if you believe that thinking thing, your mind, is who you are, then in fact you're under mind control. It may be your own mind that has control over you, but nonetheless you're under mind control. So thank you very much. I'll be signing books in the back now. And it's really interesting because I've lectured now over 2,500 times on varying subjects around the nation, different countries. And always charge for them. That's how I make my living, But I've become aware, and I believe all of you are sitting in this room because you've become aware of an urgency. There's an urgency on the planet. You can feel it. There's a shift happening. There's no denying that it's occurring. And everyone's kind of scrambling to try and make sense of this shift. And so, being one of the people who, for one reason or another, my life has led me to be able to spend time with a lot of the planetary teachers that we've had, whether they were psychologists or gurus or philosophers or self-help teachers. For some reason, you name them, and I know them personally. And I didn't pursue them per se. It just kind of happened. And being someone who's had those experiences, I've had a lot of different knowledge that's been imparted, to me. And for me now, it is critical that we just give this knowledge away. I used to sell it, and I was saying I charge for my lectures. And I'm not talking about money per se, but I myself have taken a shift in my being. And I feel it's my responsibility to at least impart what I know. And what you do with that is up to you. Okay? Now, one of the things, if you haven't seen my lectures before, one of the first things I always ask is, how many of you would like to learn something new today? Let me see your hands. Okay? Great. And then, how many of you would like me to teach you something new today? Right? That's why you're here. And what if I were to tell you that it is absolutely impossible, neurologically, physically, on any level, for me to teach you anything? Gets me off the hook, right? Because in truth, we all teach ourselves everything we've ever learned. There's not one thing that you have learned that you did not teach yourself. Someone may have shown you something, right? They showed you what 2 plus 2 was, but it was your application of that information that then led you to be able to learn it. And your repetition of that activity. You're walking, you're eating, you're riding a bike, I mean, you name it. Every single thing you've ever learned, you taught yourself. And this is very important, because that's not what we've been taught. What we've been taught is that there's these people who are the holders of knowledge, teachers, universities, institutions, and we've got to go to these, bow down, pay our bills, whatever it is, so that we can get knowledge. And I'm here to say that it's very important for you to realize that all they're going to do is provide you everything that you could find for free in the library. And that which you wish to learn, you simply need to teach yourself. Now for myself, each day when I wake up, I make it a practice to, when I awake, I spend a few moments and I set or intend my day so that everything I have ever learned becomes old. I tell myself, I wake up in the morning and I say, okay, I surrender myself to be able to absorb absolutely all new knowledge built upon everything I've ever learned so that nothing that I've learned is static. And that's how I set my day. And I encourage you from this moment forward, for those who've been in my lectures, I've already kind of challenged you to do so, but I encourage you to consider that every day, every moment that you can remember, to set your goal to learn something new today. And the reason I urge you so strongly to do that, because how the mind works, how our brains work in that capacity is that knowledge becomes like this static thing. It becomes like this decision frozen in time. And then it just sits there. And then we think we know something, right? And then we try and push our knowledge onto somebody else. And if they don't accept our knowledge, well, then they're wrong, and, well, we must be right because we have the knowledge. And in truth, all knowledge, every new idea that has ever come to our planet, every single one has become old, and something new has arisen. There's not one thing that you'll ever learn that isn't extrapolated on and grown upon. And it's kind of like, in biblical terms, unless you be like little children sitting in that state of wonder. And just that wonder of earth, of life, really what's happening. So, real quickly, for those who don't know me, I've had a lot of really profound experiences in my life. One of them was a death experience where I was dead for 10 minutes and then came back, and then, here I'm back. And as a result, had this 3-week period where I could go in and out of my body at will. As a result of that, I got really good at it because I played with it. It was like the ultimate playground. You're going in and out of your body. How often do you get to do that, right? At will. And so I did it every day as often as I could for those 3 weeks, 1,000 times a day, maybe more, in and out, in and out, in and out. And I got to the point where I got so good I could stop at the various what I call touch points between where who we are and then our perception of this reality begin to interface. And I created a spectrum, and that spectrum I teach in my 2-day class, and I'm in the process of finishing a book on that whole idea. This book doesn't cover that. Repeatlessness doesn't cover that. And so, as I speak to you today, I am not speaking to you from theory. Okay? I'm not just making stuff up because it sounds cool, or it might be an idea. I'm speaking to you from practical experience. I've been where it is I'm about to share with you. Okay? And I hope that somehow my sharing that information with you can give you an opportunity to begin to broaden your mind, open your mind, get you to a place of awareness and understanding of who you are. Because when you understand who you are, then no one can control you. It's kind of the definition of self-esteem. When we talk about self-esteem, when I do corporate classes and stuff like that, years and years and years ago, self-esteem, everyone has this idea that self-esteem means feeling good. Right? I feel good. I've got good self-esteem. I'm happy. I love myself. That's not what self-esteem is at all. self-esteem by definition, according to Jack Canfield at the International Institute of Self-Esteem, self-esteem is it exists. I'm a lifetime member. No, I'm a reject. Right? Yeah, no. The definition of self-esteem is the true knowledge of oneself. And so an example that I give is like if someone were to walk up to you and say, you have green hair, okay? And he's thinking in his mind, well, clearly this person has a perceptual problem because I do not have green hair, right? So he knows enough of himself that he knows that he doesn't have green hair. So my saying, God, dude, your hair's so green. You're like, no, it's not. What are you talking about? He's not offended by it at all. It's just like I'm the one who's crazy, right? But now if I say, you're a real stupid mother. Now, if he truly knows that he's not a stupid mother, he won't be affected in any way. But if there's a whisper inside his being that somehow maybe he is, or that he believed it when someone else told him when he was a child, then he will be affected. So truly knowing who you are gives you the opportunity to not be affected by external variables coming at you. So, I have a new analogy that I'm going to share with you guys today about kind of the human mind and really what it is and how it works. So, I have to ask a question, and I want you to contemplate this for a moment, about where your life is occurring. Think about that. Where is your life occurring? Where is it happening? Is it happening in this room? Your life's happening in this room?
Your breath.
In your breath? Your life's happening in your breath?
Mm-hmm. The breath goes out.
Mm-hmm.
It's your life.
It's your life force in your body. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm here to submit that your entire life is occurring inside your head. You are looking at me, and you are seeing me in this three-dimensional hologram that's being projected, But where all that information, those vibrations, those frequencies of light that you are seeing, where they're all going in are these two cameras, and then it gets assembled inside here, and then there's a screen inside your head, and you are seeing it in that screen. And because there's this fancy electronical work where it's sampling each eye 120 times a second, going back and forth, left, right, left, right, left, right, 120 times a second, it then builds this holographic image that we call the third dimension. But that's just your sight. You've got your sound, your taste, your smell, your touch, kinesthesiology. And all of that information is being compiled in there. That's where it's occurring. Take away any one of those senses, then where's your life occurring? Same place. Still inside there. And this is very important because to kind of give you an example, and I did this in one of the other lectures, is to give you an example of seeing that screen of where your life is occurring. Right now, as all of you are staring at me, I want you to see a pink elephant. Okay, now a baseball bat. How about a lake? An airplane? An ice cream cone? You're seeing me, but at the same time, you can see each one of those images. And it is where you are seeing those images that your life is occurring. And how many of us have spent time exploring that? Yeah, I've spent quite a lot of time. Those of us who have endeavored in some type of, extracurricular activity have been catapulted to that area. So I like to think about life here as this is the ultimate kind of internet. The Matrix, if you will. I love that movie. It's just brilliant. But this is like the ultimate internet, and you've got this biocomputer, right? You got this biocomputer. It's literally, that's what it is. It's a biological, neurological, chemical computer that's encased in this coagulated set of matter here, what we call a body. And so your biocomputer is surfing life and doing life and moving around life and being life and what have you and taking in all this information. But then we have all these distractions. Okay, these distractions that we call mind control. And what I like to think about those distractions are like pop-up windows when you're surfing the internet. And you got one open up here, one open up here, one open up here, one open. Think me, look at me, look at me, look at me. And you close this one, another one opens up. You close that one, another one opens up. And you keep on trying to close all of these pop-ups, and you can't.
Unless you have ad block.
Precisely. Precisely, because that's what we all need is a pop-up blocker. Okay? We have a pop-up blocker. He's suggesting that some of the pop-ups are what we might need.
I have to ask, because I can't keep it still. Supposing I've had a friend who's schizophrenic, and he actually sees things that don't really exist.
Right.
So what sort of light is he processing back here?
Okay, in that particular scenario, he's talking about schizophrenia. It has to do with a 7-to-1 negative ratio. 7-to-1.
Is he experiencing, is that life?
Pardon?
Is that life?
For him.
Is it life?
All of us have those types of projections. There's not a single one of us in this room that's not imagining things happening that aren't.
So my problem is I don't see that as life. I see that as perceptions that I have.
Precisely.
Inside me.
Yeah.
That's not life.
I didn't say it was life. I was saying, yeah. It's his perception of life. And his perception is projecting, holographic images. And he's living in a virtual world because he doesn't have the coping mechanisms to deal with this one.
We don't just have mind. We have heart. We have feelings. We have...
How about we let him get on with the lecture, buddy?
I'll answer questions at the end.
Yeah.
It's okay. I don't mind asking questions. No, it's a valid question because his question is having to do with the combination of heart and mind and how the heart and mind work together and how they fluctuate. So we have these things, these pop-ups that are coming up. And these pop-ups are constantly jumping into our field of awareness. And a pop-up blocker is required. Now, with that pop-up blocker, often, have a good night, sir. Ah, dear brother. So we're surfing this thing called life. We have all of these distractions coming at us that we take as so important. And we have these distractions that are literally infiltrating our reality, infiltrating our ability to be here now, to be in this reality, experiencing it as it is, and learning what it is that's coming to us to learn. Because every moment there is information for you to learn. There's not a moment that you're on this planet that you are not receiving vibrations. You're also transmitting them, but you're receiving them. And many of which have been put in there in order to distract you from paying attention to who you are. Because who you are is not the screen. Who you are is not the thoughts. Who you are not even the pop-up blockers. Who you are is that which is observing those. And when you can be in that place, as often as you can maintain it, it is absolutely impossible to be influenced by the parties that wish to influence you. I like to think of us, human beings, as transmuters, if you will. You know, you have plants that are growing, right? And they're taking sunlight and they're transmuting it into oxygen. And they're taking carbon and they're turning it into oxygen, and they're taking, you know, what have you, and they're transmuting. And the only reason I can feel or understand that we are on the planet is to transmute all negativity into either nothing and just let it dissipate harmlessly, or transmute it into a positive vibration and emanate it out. And I call this, we're like human relay stations. You know, TVs and radios, the way they transmit their signals is they bounce them from one tower to the next. And you have relay stations, and they shoot it out across the land. One picks it up, amplifies it, and shoots it back out over here. That one picks it up, amplifies it, shoots it over there. And you've got all of these relay stations that are going back and forth and shooting all of these, you know, vibrations, these frequencies, so that then they can transmit them. And so each one of us is a human relay station. Okay? Right now, we know, science has proven, that there's at least around us, like this donut in all directions, going all around us, there's at least a 12-foot electromagnetic field that is receiving and transmitting vibration. We only have the equipment to measure out 12 feet. We are confident it goes for infinity. So, are you just sitting there, taking a vibration in, and bouncing it back out to people? Because you take something negative in and you send it to him, and you got the 6 degrees of separation between all human beings. And you're taking something that's negative here, taking it back in, charging it up with your emotions, and then shooting it back out to that person, and they take it on, and they charge it up, and they send it out to another person, and all we're doing is perpetuating that. Continuously perpetuating that. And if you have a will in all of this, it's to recognize when those vibrations come in, find that place to absorb it, not resist it, breathe with it, transmute it, and send it out in a different way. And I'm going to submit right now that that's why you're in this room. It's no accident that you're sitting here right now, because this is the next step in our evolution. This isn't my idea. Talk to anyone who does what it is I do. Read any of the books. It's all about learning how to do that. That's where we are going. That's where we are. It's not even like we're going. Right now, we're there. And it's just going to get bigger and bigger and stronger and stronger and stronger. So, how often do we, and this happens to me all the time, you know, how often do we find that there's like an individual who just rubs us the wrong way? You know, no matter what you do, you know, you got them on your altar, you're praying, you do whatever you got to do to try and clean this person, but there's that vibration that they represent that just really rubs you wrong. Why is that? Why do you suppose that is? What is it based on? How are you identifying that that is what's occurring? Because remember, we have this biocomputer that we've talked about. And everything that you've learned, every way that you respond to the world is based on some programs that you have downloaded. When you were 2 years old, were you worried about death? No. Were you worried about your pension? No. Were you worried about whether you were going to get food? No. Each one of those quote-unquote survival mechanisms you downloaded. Okay? Now, each one of us, every human being, you know, we talk about dogma in the world, right? And we generally associate dogma with, like, a religion. You know, oh, they're so I don't like their dogma. Well, for purposes of this conversation, I'm going to define dogma as unquestioned belief. Okay? It's unquestioned belief. That's what dogma is. Each and every single one of us, including myself, lives a dogmatic life. We sit there, with all of these beliefs, all of these decision-making processes, all of this software running through our brain that controls every way that we perceive our reality. But where did you get them? We downloaded them. Where did we download them? How many of us actually question, why do I believe that? Why do I believe that? And I share that simply because when we started off at the beginning here, when we were talking about who teaches us and what have you, staying in that question, not being someone who knows, but always questioning what it is you know. Staying in that question creates an equality. Because none of us know. I mean, I don't know. I talk about this stuff all the time. And I talk from my experience of being able to see where I interface with reality and what have you. But every single day, I'm questioning why I believe what it is I believe. I'm questioning to try and find a new way to see it. Now, are there any forces out there in our world that are trying to tell you to believe something? Yeah?
Not anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all gotten better now. Because, wow. I've turned off the TV, I've turned off the radio. Yeah. I'm on an information fast, is how I think about it. Got to do some cleansing. And it's really, I go in and out of doing that. I spent almost 10, 15 years or somewhere in there with no TV, right? And then I kind of got seduced back into it. And, it was a funny thing, just a real quick short story. My children grew up with no TV, and they had never seen movies or anything like that until they were almost 12 years old, and someone took them to see Hook, I think it was, A Babysitter. And I was just like, how could you have done that? And sure enough, when violence started to happen, all three of my kids literally got sick. I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. How about a natural response to violence? And so then I was at the Oregon Country Fair about 5 years after that, and I was standing in some line talking to some other mom waiting to use the John, because there was just this long line there. And we're talking, and she was saying she didn't have a TV. I said, yeah, mine did. And this girl behind me said, yeah, my parents, raised me without TV, and then I went to go see a movie, and I got sick, and there it was confirmed again. And I said, wow, what a blessing that your parents did that for you, because that is the natural reaction. That is the natural reaction. And if there's anything that the powers that be who would like us to live in our little foggy world would want to be, they want us to be filled with all these types of distractions. They want us to be numbed out. They don't want us to feel what it is we're feeling. And I use the they, because it is us. It's a part of us. But there are certainly, we cannot deny the forces that are out there. Okay? We can't deny them. And so often, just driving me up the wall. When I do my types of lectures, people say, I'll see them afterwards or something. Well, you can't put a positive spin on that, or you can't, you're just happy all the time. It's like, no, it's not about being happy all the time. It's about being real. And it's about not letting our emotions get us to lose the awareness of this present moment, that we are transmitting vibrations, and it's about not taking any of that vibration and amplifying it and sending it out. That's not about being happy. It's not about being sad. It's not being about angry. It's not about any of that. It's about taking responsibility for what it is you're emanating. Sure.
Do your kids watch a lot of movies now?
No, not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. They do, and they've been desensitized to a degree, But they still have a propensity for not tuning into the tube. They're very creative. They use that time and energy. And that's what we're going to get to right now, is that, instead of driving in the car, listening to Alex rant, maybe you could try sitting in your car and emanating light and love to every being that passes by you or is sitting in traffic with you. Yeah, I said instead of sitting in your car listening to Alex Jones, I was saying listening to Alex. And I love Alex. Alex is beautiful, and he's educating many of us on a lot of things that we need to be learning about what's happening and what have you. And yet at the same time, there's rarely anything new. Yeah, pretty much. And so we sit there in that time, let's say 20 minutes in the car, 20 minutes or even a half an hour in the car, or maybe 2 20-minute sessions in the car. And that is what we are listening to. That is what is coming into our field of awareness, and that is what we are then thinking about and transmitting out. And we're perpetuating an energy that is bringing us all down. And so instead of maybe listening to those things, I was recommending or suggesting the possibility of turning that off and consciously sitting there while you're at your steering wheel, emanating light and love. Emanating compassion to every single person that walks by, that's driving by, that's flying over, whatever, all the trees, all the plants, all the, We know Dr. Emoto's work. Everyone saw, Dr. Emoto's work. And well, yeah, with water. Yeah. Everyone familiar with that? I'll tell you if you're not. Japanese scientist, he proved that he took some water, right? And they looked at it through a microscope, and the molecules were just aligning just kind of haphazardly and what have you. Then he and his lab assistants went to the water, and they intended love. Just a feeling of love into the water. Put it under the microscope, these incredible crystalline structures looking like snowflakes. I mean, they're so incredibly beautiful. Look it up on the internet if you want to go watch What the Bleep. This is older information. But that this loved water changed its structure, and water itself became like a love battery, actually storing the vibration, because then when they would take some of the loved water and add it to the non-loved water, all of a sudden, all of the molecules arranged to the same type of crystalline structure in the non-loved water. And they repeated this over and over and over in multiple labs. It's not just an idea. It's proven. It's scientific that we affect our reality. We know that in quantum physics. In quantum physics, the observer changes the experiment. That the observer's vibration actually changes the results of every single experience, every single experiment. That their vibration interacts with the experiment. So the reason I share that with you is sitting in your car. Well, you know what? There's water in the grass. There's water in the trees. There's water in the clouds. There's water in your body. Yeah. But the point is that any time you are emanating, consciously choosing to transmute that negativity and send it into the environment that is around you, it is being stored in the environment. There's even water in this air. So the whole 8th chapter of my book, and this is the commercial part of the lecture, the whole 8th chapter is about that. The whole 8th chapter is what I call recipes for repeatlessness. Now, I discovered a new law in our universe, and it's called the law of repeatlessness. And essentially, it's just the definition of the here and now. No one's ever defined it as a law. And that there's no two moments, no two experiences, no two anything that are ever the same. Life is constantly evolving, either taking on energy or shedding it. Every particle, every nanosecond is changing in this entire evolution, the entire cosmos, as far as we can see, to every end of the universes that are being created, are constantly moving and changing. There's nothing that is static. It is all growing. Life is, in and of itself, a state of repeatlessness. And the only place where repeating occurs is through the perception of our minds. But it's not true. It can't be. Well, there's many reasons. She says, why are we so attached to that? And that's next week's lecture. Or next month's lecture. Because what you're beginning to address is what is known as what I call the human value system. And what we value, why we value, and what the heck a value is. And so that's what we talk about next month. We start getting into that aspect of the mechanics of how your mind works. Okay? All right, so you've got this entire software package that you've downloaded, okay? And I'm here to tell you there's a bunch of viruses in there, there's a bunch of pop-up things in there, there's worms in there, they've been assembling, they've been doing that, and whether you're aware of it or not, as long as you think you are that thinking thing and you cannot get behind it, stand behind it, and actually look at your mind the way you are looking at me, you are under mind control, and all of those programs have got you. Yeah. Okay? And it's not my idea, it's just the fact. And how many yogis for how many years and how many teachers have been telling us it? You know? Well, it's time to get it. You know, I can't get any plainer than that. It's time to get it. If there's anything that we're doing right now is we are, if you will, for lack of a better way of saying it, spiritual warriors. And we're under a spiritual warfare right now. Not religious. Very different. But a spiritual warfare. Because everything that has been out there to tell you who you are has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that you are light and love and beauty and the quintessential expression of everything that is the perfection of life. That's who you are. But very few of us, including myself, were not exposed to that information. I had to stumble upon it. And so until we get to that place where we know that that is who we are, you know, in different Hindu practices and the Vedas and what have you, there's 3 blocks that exist, you know, and they talk about in Siddha Yoga, this is their big thing. You have the Sushumna, which is your Kundalini, and you've got this energy that's rising up, and that is your life force that's coming through you. And there's 3 blocks. Out of the 7 chakras, there's 3 main blocks, and one of them has to do with realizing that you are God. People have a problem with that one. Right? The other one has to do with that you are one with everything. And that the other block has to do that when you're looking out and you see another, that they are in fact yourself. So I'm seeing a lot of myself right now. And I can honestly say I love myself.
I love you too.
So we've got all these programs, and all of these programs have a profound effect on us and our lives, and we have all these experiences too, right? You know, this whole mind is just filled with all these memories and all this stuff of all these experiences, all these influences, all this kind of stuff. And it has a profound effect on who you're busy being. Right? Pretty simple. I mean, I think we all can agree on that. We're influenced. So, there's a really key point today that I want to get across in this lecture. Okay, if the whole lecture is about anything, it's about this. That what happens to a person in your presence, so what happens to another being in your presence, is a function of who you are, not what you know. I'm going to run it by a couple times. That what happens to another person in your presence, so you're hanging out with some folks, and what happens to those folks in your presence is a function of who you are, not what you know.
Isn't that karma?
But aren't we all each other?
And who you are is how you have processed all of the things that have happened in your life. Because you are a vibration. And let's say you had some trauma in your life. Something happened to you when you were younger. And you've not resolved that trauma. So that trauma is still who you are. still vibrating inside of you. And that trauma, with every single person you interact with, is being transferred. I'll give you an example. Worked with this one lady. When she was younger, 30 years prior to my meeting her, she was gang raped, stabbed 17 times, and left for dead. Pretty profound experience. Talk about some post-traumatic stress. For 30 years, she'd been seeing psychologists and psychiatrists on all different types of medications, trying to resolve that problem. No success whatsoever. None. After working with her for just about 45 minutes, she had gotten to a point, working a program, it's called the collapse method. She had gotten to a point where she realized that in that moment, when it was actually occurring to her, she went back to when it was happening, that she realized that in order to cope with the horrible thing that was happening, she went off into kind of like what she would call this virtual world, where she met what she called her guardian angels. But she met some other beings. Whether it was virtual or real is irrelevant. She went there. And this was her coping mechanism in this disaster. Well, those beings never left her. She had a relationship with them for all these years afterwards. And it just so happens that as a result of having that relationship with those beings, she went on over the 30-year periods of time to build one of our preeminent healing centers here in the United States that hundreds of thousands of people have gone to, and therapists have gone to, and I'm not allowed to say the name of the place, but you go there and you do juice fasts and all different types of cleansing. But the point is that she got to realize through a session that we were doing that if that experience had not happened to her, she never would have met those beings. She never would have focused her life on health and healing and spirituality. And that the actuality of that horrible thing that happened actually was an incredible blessing. And that she was so grateful now that that happened because hundreds of thousands of people are being healed as a result of that experience. And all of a sudden, boom, she processed that whole experience differently. Now, before that, she was the victim. She was the all this horrible stuff had happened. And everybody she knew about that and could feel it and all the pain and the suffering. And, well, I shouldn't be so bad about mine because look how bad hers was. And all this comparison and all this other kind of stuff when all of a sudden now, she's not putting that vibe out. And what was funny was that people were still trying to relate to her like that. And she's saying, no, no, no. It's all cool. I'm glad I was raped and stabbed 17 times. Because if it wouldn't happen, we wouldn't have this facility and all these people wouldn't know. Which was a pretty beautiful transformation. But who she was or who she is shifted in that moment. And now what happens in her presence, instead of people commiserating about their pain and all this other kind of stuff, because she was able to transform them, now everyone that comes to her for healing focuses on their own healing. Focuses on the beauty and the love and the beauty of everything that ever happened to you, happened to get you to this moment in this room right now. Every single thing that happened to you. I can go through. I mean, I was beat up almost every single day by an alcoholic father, kicked in the everywhere you could not be kicked, thrown through walls, you name it. That was my childhood. Thanks, Dad. It's a tough one, but it's the real. It's the real. So what happens to a person in your presence is a function of who you are, not what you know. And who you are is how you have processed all of your life experiences. Now we've got this part of our brain called the prefrontal lobe. Okay? And the prefrontal lobe's job is to protect you. Right? That's what it does. And how it goes about doing that is it has this whole list of experiences that you've had. And, like for this lady, her stabbing and all this other kind of stuff, and for myself, every single one of us, right? We've got this list of negative experiences that we have. And in order to protect us from these negative experiences on this list, I call it your typewriter list, and it's this endless piece of paper with all these things typed on it that are all the things that have ever happened to you. And your frontal lobe is constantly scanning this list and then looking out into the future, trying to find anything that's comparing to that on the list so as to make sure it can avoid that feeling of pain again. Okay? That's what it does. It has no other function. It's just a survival mechanism. It's there to protect you. So now, you got a lot of unprocessed issues, let's say. A lot of decisions frozen in times, a lot of dogma, a lot of beliefs about life that you haven't questioned. All on this list. And so then your little prefrontal lobe is out there looking for every occurrence that even resembles anything about it, trying to manipulate this outer reality so as to keep you safe and away from those boogeymen. And that's where my, acronym for fear comes about. FEAR, fantasized events appearing real. They're just fantasies that are being projected out in the future in order to protect you. But there's really nothing to protect you from, because those are all in the past. They're not here and now. We actually manifest them. We actually look for them. And and the analogy that they use is a shoe salesman notices everyone's shoes, a car salesman everyone's car, hairdressers everyone's hair. And that kind of the ultimate joke in the Buddhist world about that is, when a pickpocket meets a saint, he sees only his pockets. So that what you are trying to avoid because of trauma and pain, our whole life is about avoiding trauma and pain, is that what you see every single day? But what if you could project an anticipation of seeing beautiful things happen? People working together, sharing, being honest with each other, loving each other. What if? What if that is what your prefrontal lobe was projecting out there looking for? What would your world be like then? I'm just the messenger here. This is what you need to teach yourself. We talked about that. I can't teach you this. I can show you it. But there's something that brought you here tonight. There was a longing. A longing for some type of truth, some type of organization of this mess this soup that we're dancing around in. And if you've ever had free will, it is to begin to initiate the various processes that are necessary in order for you to extract yourself from all of that, because every single bit of it only exists in your mind. And your mind only exists in time. Time is simply a measurement. Time doesn't exist. That's another one of the world's biggest dogmas, what day it is. It's now. It's forever now. And your mind takes time to process. So if you are thinking, you are in time, and if you are in time, you're not here now. And if you're not here now, I guarantee you got a program running that's transmitting negativity, trying to help you avoid your boogeyman from the past. So in the 60s, it just drives me up the wall sometimes when I contemplate what the 60s really was. Because, when you think about the 60s and what happened there, right now it's all boiled down to, well, it was free love and drugs and, all this other kind of stuff and what have you. And really, what the 60s was about was that for the first time in the history of humankind that I'm aware of, love was an option. Love became an option. That we can choose love. Everything. The plants, the water, so we had ecology and each other and equality and all these different types of things. The unity, all of that based in love. And then we got that kind of squelched and kind of pushed away, and then we all kind of went off into our little worlds and had our kids and what have you, and hey, guess what's returning? And as a result of that happening 40 years ago, isn't it just something that we can go to Randall's and find organic food? I went to one of these, little like 7-Eleven type quick stop type things like that, and they had Naked Juice in them, if you're familiar with that company. I mean, that's an organic juice. And I remember the days when my buddies and I were buying the 100-pound bags of rice and divvying it out to all our friends so that we could afford it, and that was the beginning of, quote-unquote, the co-op, right? And then whenever we could get organic food, man, we latched it up because we knew we had to support those farmers. And now, many of you here in this room know nothing else other than organic food's just there.
Never even heard of it.
Yeah. You never heard of organic food? Right now?
Well, it's probably a way to charge more money for whatever it is.
Well, it's certainly a way to eat foods that's not saturated in a whole bunch of different petrochemicals. But the concept was that 40 years ago something started, and then something went a little bit of sleep, and now it's arising again. And that what is going to happen to you and your community and everyone you know is going to be a function of who you are. And who you are is what you have done with all the things that have ever happened in your life. If you are sitting there a victim and you think that something bad happened to you, well, you know what? I'm here to say you're playing a game with yourself, and that's controlling your life, and it's perpetuating more of that stuff happening in your life. And there's thousands upon thousands of studies. That's just me repeating the information to you. But finding the various ways. I have ways in my book, I have ways in my technologies, but it's not about me tonight. It's about you transforming so that who you are is being a human relay station that is taking the negativity that's coming to you, transmuting it, and turning it into something else. And those of us who do that are those of us who are going to make it through the transition that's occurring. And that's not to scare, and that's not to use fear. That's just pretty clear. Because the others are probably going to be fighting themselves, which is unfortunate. Doesn't have to be that way. Gandhi gave us that example, He gave us that example. There's so much I want to talk about. And, each lecture is funny because I come here with a set of goals to accomplish and sharing with you. And then what happens is that the soup and energy of the room guides me in totally different directions. And then I got to think about what was it I was going to talk about, Some of my lectures are fun, some of them are very serious. This one today is kind of a combination of both in that I can sugarcoat it and kind of make it fun and happy and playful for you. I'm not in that mood today. Maybe it's the cold, maybe it's the moon that just passed, maybe I've got gas from that burrito. I don't know, But I will be who I am and not try and pretend to be something else. And who I am is that right now. In one's awakening, the process of awakening to themselves, one can find a great deal of resistance from within inside themselves. Little pop-up windows. Right? And to learn that each one of those pop-up windows aren't who you are is the beginning steps in realizing who it is you are. You know, someone asked me the other day, what do you do for a living? Right? I was like, well, okay, I'm a biosoftware engineer. That's what I do for a living. I'm introducing new software, new scanware into your biocomputers so that you have the opportunity to scan what's going on in there and make a difference in your life. It was very much a lecture like this that totally transformed my life when I first met a guy named Ram Dass when I was 19 years old. And he just sat there and did what I'm doing, and all of a sudden the lights went on. And it took, 27 years later to kind of get what he meant. Yeah.
When you say distractions, are you literally referring to advertisements? Or?
Yeah, I speak metaphorically, but yeah, literally advertisements. But every single one of the things that ever happened to you in your life that you haven't resolved. So dad beating you up, a teacher yelling at you, getting a bad grade and feeling ashamed, all those types of things actually can surface. Well, what happens is that unless you realize that that was part of your evolution, okay, to learn how to not be affected by others people's judgment of you, okay, if you can find that those things are lessons for you, then they kind of get what I call equilibrated, and they get erased from the memory banks, and they no longer have a pull on your awareness. Okay, because I talk about the awareness. What you're viewing all of this life, what you're attending with all of this stuff is with your awareness. Okay? Where you're observing yourself observe things. Now that awareness, unless you have harnessed control over it, is very much like I talked in my other lectures, like this unmanned fire hose. And this unmanned fire hose is just flipping around and going over here. And it's like you wake up in the morning, it's like, oh, it's 6 o'clock. And, oh, is that coffee I smell? Oh, yeah, I got to go pick up the laundry. Oh, what about that meeting? Oh, gosh, I got to get that other stuff. And you're just dragged around moment to moment to moment, from sense to sense, by this fire hose that's just flipping around, going wherever it wants to go. And so these pop-ups are essentially where each one of those fire hose moments stop. And I use the pop-up just because it kind of comes into your screen, right? And it kind of forces you from being able to see beyond it. They start filling up your screen. And so each one of those distractions, as you get quieter and quieter and be in the moment, when you start going there, those little things will begin to bubble up. And you'll begin to feel them. And when you begin to feel them, you may have certain beliefs and decisions about them, and then all of a sudden a whole series of thoughts go off. Those thoughts create chemicals, and it's this cycle of going around and around and around like that. And then you're out of the moment. You're off thinking somewhere, and you believe all of that is real. So that's what I mean by a distraction.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, when you feel something, okay, when we talk about beliefs, what happens, here's what it is. Do with it what you will. Okay? Each one of us has a sensation in our being. Ever-changing sensation. We're in repeatlessness. Okay? The truth is repeatlessness. Every moment is fresh and new. There's never anything that's actually reoccurring. There's a central sensation that's occurring in our body. Now, when that sensation begins to kind of get particularly intense in a way, we then wrap thoughts around that sensation to give it meaning. Now, when we give that sensation meaning, we then define it as a feeling. So it's not a feeling yet. You just got this vibe going on. You feel this vibe. Then you check your list. You say, oh, that vibe means this. Boom, oops. And you define that vibe as a feeling. It kind of feels like that too, right? And so you defined it as a feeling. Now, you've got this thing called a feeling. What do you do with the feeling? So then you make a decision about your belief about this feeling. This feeling is good or bad. And based on how you decide this feeling is, you then have what is called an emotion, energy in motion. You've got this vibration that comes in. This energy is here. You wrap thought around it with comparative stuff from your past. You then decide that it means this, and that meaning is defined as a feeling. That feeling then is then responded to or reacted to with energy in motion or emotion, and then we respond or react to our reality. And we just thought someone was being a jerk. Now, every single thought you have has a chemical signature. Okay, there's not a single thought that you have that doesn't elicit chemicals into your body. So every single feeling you have is literally, you get this vibration going on. The moment you begin to identify that, really what's happening underneath all of side of that is that that sensation is actually a biochemical equation. You've got these chemicals in your body and they're thriving around like this, and they cause you to then associate the sensation that you have with these chemicals, and then you begin to apply what you think is thinking. You think you're thinking thoughts, right? And really what you're doing is you're identifying those chemicals. And so with those chemicals that you've identified, when you say, okay, I've got this chemical, that chemical, oh, that's anger. You don't know that that's what you're doing, but that's what's happening, and we've mapped it. There's no question. That's what's going on in your body. Every single thought that you have is actually just a biochemical reaction to a sensation that's happening in your body. You've got a problem in your life. Oh, somebody did this, or I got to pay the rent. So it shows up as a quote-unquote problem. Okay, where's your life occurring? Inside this thing. Problem's not out there. Problem's now in here. How do we sense it? Biochemistry in our body. We then have learned over our lifetime a series of thoughts, linear thoughts, which actually are chemical recipes to try and neutralize this feeling. We think we're solving a problem. And really what we're doing is we're applying thought which elicits certain chemicals in order to equilibrate or neutralize that chemical sensation that's in our body. Once it is neutralized and equilibrated, we have, aha, problem solved. No longer bothers us.
So does the biochemistry happen before the thought?
Yes. And then is ramped up by the thought. Actually, the very first sensation you have is electromagnetic. This donut that's around you. Okay, your electromagnetic field is that which is...
Somebody else's actions with your...
Well, it's not even another human being. I mean, there's millions upon trillions upon of influences that are coming in. Right.
And then that your biochemistry responds to the vibration,
Correct.
which then your thoughts react to.
Precisely.
Okay.
Yeah. You can actually take your awareness that we were just speaking about to the place where all of that is occurring. Actually take your awareness, like if you're looking at that TV screen and you can put it on there, the pink elephant, we all see the pink elephant, you have the ability to take your consciousness, your awareness, to any one of these points, but you didn't know they even existed in the first place. You know? When we talk about the 3 areas of knowing, I'm just going to touch them real quick, just so that you've got the perspective that we're working on here. You have that which you know, right? So you know that you know how to read, or you know how to change the toilet paper roll, or to drive a car. You know how to do that. Then there's that which you don't know, right? You know, you don't know the escape velocity of, maybe you do because you're a rocket scientist, but he literally is. But that's the analogy I always use, and it doesn't work this time. You may not know the escape velocity of a rocket. You don't know that. Okay? Then, so there's that what you know, there's that what you know you don't know, and then there's that what you don't know that you don't know. You just don't know that you don't know it. You had no idea. But then, when you explore and reach into that which you don't know that you don't know, it all of a sudden becomes that which you don't know. That you know, that you know you don't know. Now you know you don't know it. And so much of this stuff today that I am bringing into your awareness is that which you didn't know that you didn't know. But now you know that you don't know it. And now it is up to you to teach yourselves to know it. To know that you know it. And the way that you know it is by beginning to dissolve those perceived walls of separateness, those perceived walls of everything that's going on in the mind, learning to meditate, center yourself. Some people do it through creativity, through music. Some people do it through walking in the woods. Some people do it by sitting and meditating. But I encourage you to just kind of hang out with yourself. And one of the very real easy exercises is to sit with yourself quietly, just breathing in, breathing out, and try becoming aware of your heart beating. Just literally sitting there, listening to your heart beat. Because this is your pulse. This is one of your vibrations that you're putting out into the world. I don't know how many of you have actually sat there and hung out with your heart. But you get there and you're getting closer to the now. Because the deeper you go with that, then you begin to actually be able to feel the pulses in your body. That you feel your heart, then you feel your wrist pulse, then you feel you feel your heart, you feel your neck, you feel your wrist, and then you feel your ankles. And then with every heartbeat, it's and then you go deeper than that, where not only do you feel it here, then you feel it going around your brain and back down. And you actually can feel all of your circulation. Now this is just kinesthetic awareness. You can do this with your vision and just staring out. We talked about the vision meditation on other lectures, and it's in my book. You can do it with sound. Anyone ever hear the ringing in their ears? Did you ever hang out with it and listen to it? Because you hang out with it long enough. It's a whole yoga in India. It's called Naya Yoga, N-A-Y-A. And Naya Yoga is the study of listening to that sound. And you carry that sound long enough, and what happens is that ringing all of a sudden becomes like little bells. And then the little bells turn into violins. And then the violins turn into trumpets. And then the trumpets turn into this entire symphony. And that's where Beethoven and those guys were sitting. They were copying down the vibrations of the world that their actual ears, these instruments, were hearing. Not what you were listening to, but what the actual instruments are hearing. And when you take yourself to those areas, that is when you're in the moment. That is what you are capable of. And spending as much time in that moment, you begin to no longer identify with that thinking thing. You no longer begin to identify with all of those processes and horrors and tragedies and all these things that have happened in our lives. And you just start being in the moment. And then what happens to people in your presence? They start being in the moment. Start being authentic. Start being there with you. But if you're off in your mind over here and there, you're just perpetuating. So yeah, they put cancer in us inside of all of our injections if we got polio shots. Oh well, so be it. You know, am I getting pissed off and angry? That's going to make it better or make it change, or that's going to alter it? Yeah.
You were talking about moving your awareness to the center of a biochemical reaction.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that without it getting interrupted by your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, ultimately, that which is watching it, okay, that which is observing it, has nothing to do with your thoughts. You're never going to be able to stop your thinking. You just no longer attend to it. Thinking occurs continuously, 24 hours a day, whether you're awake or asleep. You have over 50,000 thoughts every single day. You're aware of and interact with approximately 5%, 2,500 of them. Okay? Of those 2,500 currently on the planet, of those 2,500 that we interact with, approximately 80% or 2,000 of them are negative or limiting in some way. That's the human condition that we exist in. It's a 4-to-1 ratio. There is not a human being on the planet, very few, let's put it that way, less than 0.001% of the human population on the earth has less than a 4-to-1 negative thought ratio. They have 4 negative thoughts for every positive one. And that's clinically known as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So the entire planet is living in post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, you can't stop that thing. You can begin to see that your thoughts are going off that list. You remember that list that I talked about, the typewriter list, and you got 4 negative ones. So for myself, let's say I'm going to write a book, and my mind says, "You can't write a book. If you could write a book, everyone would write a book. Why do you think you can write a book? You can't write a book." No, I want to write a book, and on and on and on, fighting this thing. Okay? So there is a process of quieting the mind in the degree that you don't have the negative thoughts happening, where you begin putting in positive ones. You know, and I've got a whole series of CDs here that are specific to that, to reprogramming. It's new software. And I've created whole new techniques on how you do that reprogramming. But all of that is just to kind of quiet that thing, the mind, so it's not distracting you and pulling you in different ways. But that which is tending to all of this stuff has nothing to do with the mind. Now, it's funny because the mind trying to see the mind and what the mind is like your own eyeballs trying to see themselves. They can't. Your eyeballs cannot see themselves. And trying to see your mind with your mind is the same thing. You can't. But as you quiet yourself and begin to just start these, like the breathing exercise or attending to your heart, you begin to disassociate with those thoughts. And that's the whole idea of mantra. I mean, everyone's heard of mantra, right? Mantra. The whole idea of mantra is it's called a cognitive centering device. That's how it's described in psychology. And basically you're cognizing, you're aware of it, and it's a centering device. It's a tool. And so the idea of doing a mantra, you know, I am love, I am love, I am love, or if you're doing Sanskrit, you know, whatever, which one you want to do. The point is that what those do is they get your mind to concentrate on a single thought. So that every aspect of your thinking is just on one single thought. And it's that mantra repeating over and over and over and over and over and over and over. I had a set of beads that you read about in my book that I no longer have. The universe took them away from me. But for 3 years, I'm holding these beads in my hand. Every day, all day, holding in conversations and everything, doing a mantra. Focusing my brain. I was just using one of the words of, you know, the name of God in Hinduism, which is Ram. So I'd be Ram, 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 Ram. And it got so good that I could be having a conversation with you, and I could be doing Ram, 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 Ram in my hand, but then in another loop in my head is Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram, 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 Hare. Another one in my head going Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. You may have heard that. It's a Sanskrit chant for peace. It comes from Buddhism. And I could actually get 4 or 5 of these mantras going simultaneously, and I'm holding a conversation with you. Another didn't know you didn't know, but now you know you don't know. There's a lot of levels at which you work at it. But all of that was to put my brain on what is called base brain activity. Okay? This brain is doing this thing, and it's going to be doing it all the time. It's either controlling you or you're controlling it. Simple as that. You're either in control of all this stuff or it's in control of you. That's it. I'm making it up. If you don't get it today in this lecture, the seed's been planted, you'll get it later. So, excuse me just a second. So this idea of base brain activity, I'll just touch on that real quickly, just for a moment. But base brain activity is similar to the activity of driving your car. Okay? When you're driving the car, how many of you are actually contemplating, when you're not on drugs, how many of you, or drunk, how many of you are contemplating all the physics and all, that you've got inertia going and there's vectors and all this other kind of stuff and that, and having to do all of this, incredible stuff, traveling through time and space and what have you? No. You're just sitting there thinking about the grocery list or what she said to you or what the grooves are on the tune, the tunes that are on the radio and stuff like that. You're not thinking about all that stuff. Well, that's because driving the car became a base brain activity. When you're walking, are you thinking about, lift, step, place, lift, step, place, balance, transfer, muscles? Yeah, I know. But you know what I mean. No, walking has become a base brain activity. Same thing with eating, biting, chewing, salivating, digestive juices. No. Base brain activity. So, learning to do any of these exercises with the brain, these concentration activities, are putting your mind, specifically mantra, when we're talking about that and looking at thoughts and what have you and controlling our thoughts, working with mantra is putting your mind, your thinking process, on base brain activity. So that then you can go do all the cool stuff like astral travel and, meld with all of the universe and all those kind of things that you want to do. That you're doing it already, you're just not attending to it. It's like the idea, when you are sitting here, listening to me, it's like when I'm having a conversation with someone and I'm sitting with them, my awareness very frequently is not on anything that they're saying, but my awareness is seeing their screen. So when someone says to me, do you see what I mean? It's like, well, yeah, I do see it. And the truth of the matter is when you're listening, that's where you're actually listening, but you don't even know it. If someone is within 12 feet of you, certainly within 12 feet of your sphere, you're taking on all of their thoughts, all of their feelings, everything that's in their world. And the real transmission that happens between us has nothing to do with these sounds that are representing any form of meaning. That's just keeping us cool. But really what's happening here is that as a result of my being with all these different beings that I've been throughout my life and my death experience and what have you, there's a vibration that is coming of my being because I don't identify with any of this story, any of this light, any of these figures that appear to be separate from myself. I know there's only one being here. And we're all feeling it. We're all feeling it. And that's why we come together like this, is to feel that. And it's very different than maybe the mind control lecture you came to hear about. But that's the essence of it, man. That's the essence. So for today, and this lecture on mind control, which will be on the internet in a couple weeks here, the key essence that I want you to walk away with is that, and I'll repeat it and we'll summarize, but that what happens to people in your presence is a function of who you are. Who you are is how you have processed everything that has happened in your life. And how you have processed things in your life has generated certain beliefs, certain decisions frozen in time about how things are. As soon as you have a decision frozen in time, there's no more growth. It stops. It's stagnant. It's frozen. And you are here to evolve and grow and to expand and to transmute those energies like a plant. And to then go out into the world and emanate that everywhere you are. I can't figure out any other reason to be on the planet. It was the only thing I could see that was actually happening when I came back into my body. You know, being gone for 10 minutes and the sheet over you and like, you know, and then, ha-ha, I'm back, you know. Pretty wild thing. And being able to move in and out for those 3 weeks. And I saw the function of our bodies as these kind of like almost like psychic digestive systems.
Why don't you just stay out?
That's a good question. I don't believe I actually had a choice. If you really want me to take it to the deepest levels, well, no, I don't know if we should go there because neither one is better. It has to do with what you identify with. Because what it was like, okay, when you leave your body, okay, death is way overrated, okay? It is way overrated. We make it into this big movie about, oh my God, I'm dying. It's like taking off an old tight shoe. And it's just like, it's actually the most beautiful, relaxing, calming, beautiful experience you'll ever have. And it's what we're all seeking here while we're in our bodies. It's what we're all seeking. We're all seeking to have that peace. I know that for myself that the very first thing that you let go of, I mean, I'm trying to wrap this up, but I'll just go on for just a second. When you're transitioning out, I mean, people always, I don't really talk a whole lot about my death experience, okay? Because I don't want you to be focused on that, because that's just some fairy tale that's going to happen in the future. Really, where life is happening is right now. This is where we need to be. I can go and tell you my little fairy tale of what happened and what have you, but that takes us all out of the moment. You know, so I really envision us all getting together, you know, a few years down the road and not say a single word and then go home and everyone's like, wow, profound evening. What a profound talk. Where we just come together and resonate, you know.
You mentioned earlier that you have blocked yourself off from all TV and that sort of thing. What do you do? Do you read? Do you...
Yeah, it really varies. I mean, it really varies. At first, I went through withdrawals because, you know, during the whole election thing, you know, I was really studying all the mind control that was going on and all the playing and all the influences and all the stories, and many of which I had predicted beforehand because I saw things coming a year ago that they were kind of planting little seeds that this was going to happen. Even 3 years ago when they had the first Fox, what was that show called, 24, where in 24 they had a black president. A couple years ago. First time we have a black president. Now, he got assassinated, so I don't know. But, and back then I said, watch, 2008, black president. Wrote it down in my thing. And I nailed that one. Yeah. It's my fault. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. You know. Anyway, so in answer to your question, what do I do, Joe Marshala personally? I do spend time... I spend time meditating. I spend time playing guitar, play conga. I'll read different books, different passages from books. I have all different types of spiritual texts from all different types of leaders. I will step outside. I've got this brain that just compiles all this information and then finds all the associations and then can relate to all different types of sciences and stuff like that. So I have to put myself in that space.
So you're really not blocking yourself off from all like stimuli or
No, not stimuli. Just all the influence that's trying to make me think and feel a certain way. There's not a single thing on TV that's telling me that I'm okay. everything on TV is telling me I'm not good enough. I need something else to feel better or to be better. Or that I need to worry about this because something's coming down the pike. And I'm like, screw that. I don't need that. You know? And there's this thing, okay, maybe this is an exercise. Because I'm not saying, don't watch TV, because I do. Right? I turn it on every now and then just to kind of, tune in and see something. I'll give like 5 minutes and okay, that boom, I got that vibe, and I'm checking myself. But something that I used to do, with my children, and I write about this in the book, as I said. I realized one day, my kids are all in their 20s now. Okay, so when they were really small, I birthed all of them. I homeschooled them, grew their own food. Everything they ate for the first 8 years of their life, I grew and canned. My hair used to be down to here. I lived 2 years barefoot without any shoes. So it gives you a little bit of, now I'm an undercover hippie, plain clothes hippie. But when they were really young, I remember we were playing in our yard one day and a siren went by. And I realized in that moment when that siren went by that the sense of alertness kind of hit my being. That I don't know, I couldn't identify what it was, but it was kind of like a fear or kind of a worry or something hit my being. And I realized that, whenever I heard a siren, whether I was in the car or not, that it meant something not good was happening. Right? And here I have these little beings that I'm responsible for, And are they being influenced by that siren in a negative way? And how's that going to affect their reaction to the world? And so we made a game out of it. We called it the siren game. And every time we heard a siren, anywhere, we would stop whatever we were doing. And we would intend love, light, and compassion, and understanding and healing to whoever was actually associated with that siren. And so then we started to extrapolate that everyone who could hear it would then feel that vibration. So then years later, so now even today, you can call one of my girls and say, and they'll say, yeah, I hear it every time a siren goes by. I got to stop conversation with my friend, and I got to, it's just an automatic process in their world, and it's still in mine. But I then realized that when I was watching TV and a commercial would come on, I would feel that same feeling. Just like the siren. Yeah. Yeah. And I sensed that. And so I realized, aha, the siren game. So what I do now is that I look at that commercial very frequently. I will put the mute on so that I don't have to hear it. But I look into the TV, I imagine my awareness going through the wires, back to the satellite tower, up to the satellite over Earth, back down into the towers, and into all of the wires and all the TVs that are watching that commercial so that they feel my love. And transmute that moment and that energy that's trying to control me and take it and use it as a vehicle to remember that I'm a transmuting love being. That's what I am. That's why I'm here. So find the different things. I just love the commercials on GCN, huh? Yeah. Food is running out, Sure, go ahead.
Else out there is seeing that commercial and it's coming over the airwaves and they're feeling all this love, they're just going to tend to respond to it even more.
Well, yeah, no, I attend to, that really, I love it. Oh, I want that. Well, unfortunately, no, because, how it works, how actually subliminal advertising in that regard works is it creates a sense of lack in your being. And so when you have that sense of lack, that's what all commercials are designed for. There's people, I worked in television, and I'm pretty much aware of it, that we are to create the need. The need doesn't exist in a human being. And so we create the need in that being. And you guys know about that, right? You create the market. You make them want to need it. But it has everything to do with a sense of their self-esteem. That somehow they're wrong, they're bad, they're lacking, they need. And so I tend to think that if I'm sending love, that they're full and they're radiant and they don't need. that they're completely beautiful and whole as they are, and counteract, literally balance that equation. But I understand what you mean. It would seem like, So, are there any other questions? Anybody want to ask anything before we close? Yes, go ahead.
You keep talking about after 3 weeks you stopped the astral projection. What happened at 3 weeks?
Nothing in particular. I can still do it, but I just say it's only 3 weeks. It was really intense for 3 weeks where I kind of had no choice. It actually, for a while there, for the first week, or actually about the first 3 or 4 days, I had no control over it. I was just going in and out. And it was happening to me. And then I found the steering wheel, if you will, and found how to begin. And I'd spent years meditating and years kind of apparently preparing for that, And I kept on trying to steer with my mind, only to realize that that's not where you steer from. Because when you steer with the mind, then you're here.
Where were you when you were out?
Pardon?
Where were you when you were out?
That's going to be the 6th lecture.
Where was your body while you were vacant?
What appears to be my body was laying in my bed. First at ICU. Pardon?
How'd you steer?
That's the 6th lecture. No, it's important. I can't give, I can't like sit you in the 747 and say, okay, fly. We got to learn the ground school. We got to learn the different stuff. And so, I could tell you, but it would mean nothing. So, okay, it's been a little while. Sure, you got 2 questions. Go ahead first.
You talked about earth changes. Could you be a little more specific about what you mean by these earth changes?
Well, I think there's a transition in consciousness. I think that right now we're in a planetary personality crisis. Okay? That we have a planetary personality crisis because what we have identified ourselves as is our possessions. Not only our possessions, but then all of our worth is based on everything external. And right now, everything that's external is falling apart. And so all of our worth is in question. And as a result of all of our worth being in question, we've got a lot of psychosis going on. And we find a lot of people, really in a bad way. It's creating an enormous amount of stress. And we see, if you look at the enrollment in hospitals, there's more car accidents, there's more health issues, there's more people in hospitals and sick and getting in car accidents right now than there were a year ago. Isn't that interesting? It has to do a lot with this planetary death. Now, in the death process, there's 5 stages. Okay, Margaret Kubler-Ross, you guys might be aware of her work, right? The 5 stages of death. And it doesn't necessarily mean a physical death, but a death of a concept, a death of an idea, a death of an identification or an identity that you carry. And the 5 stages are, the acronym is DABDA, D-A-B-D-A, DABDA. And first you have denial. Okay, and you deny it. Then you have anger. Then you have bargaining. Right now we're in bargaining. Trying to bargain and make this all work and make this all great. Oh, yeah. If we just give them this money and give them that money, we've been in denial. The anger has been around. We see the wars. We see that emanating throughout the entire planet and what have you. Now we're trying to bargain worldwide, trying to make it all fixed and work. But then eventually there is the depression, both physically and emotionally. And then there is acceptance. And so right now we are, and see, it's not like each one of those, there's like little cycles of each one inside each one of the cycles, right? So there's this continuous thing, but those are the real core kind of ones that you can look at. And so right now, there's no question in my in my mind that there is a planetary personality crisis, and that we are dying from our identity and our self-worth being through our possessions and the things that we own or can have or get. And as a result, we are awakening to the fact that we are love, we are light, and that we are beautiful, worthy beings as we are. We don't need anything. And that everything that ever happened to us has led us to that realization, that all of it was lessons, there were no mistakes. And then here we are. And so that's the planetary change. And it's happening. I'm just observing it.
You think there's maybe an underlying, like everyone kind of knows what's going on, but nobody either wants to say anything, or kind of there's everyone has a sense of urgency in their being, but no one can quite put a word on it?
Yeah, we're looking for a context to communicate about it, because we don't have one that's not a religion. Right. And that's what I do on my radio show. For those of you who don't know, I got a weekly radio show. It's two hours. Yeah, 2 hours. I'm still getting back in the body. It's taken me a few years now. It's 2 hours long every Monday. It's called The Cup of Joe Show, and this is what we talk about. And I've got people from 22 countries, thousands of people listening to the radio show. And getting you can download all the archives. You can go to my website, Joe Marshalla. They're all right there. You can download them, use them, send them to friends, listen to them. But that's all we talk about. We're having that conversation. I'm generating that conversation. I'm going to a daily show very soon. We're just now getting a new antenna up, and I don't know the frequency. It's something like 89.7. It's a new kind of like the same one that the other guys are doing. I don't know anything about it. I just heard that it's happening, and I have to say it that way. Just a moment. Let me finish something, and then I'll get right to you. It's called Co-Creator Network. The Co-Creator Network. Co-Creator Network. And if you just go to my website, Joe Marshalla, or repeatlessness.com, you can link to the radio station. But all the shows on that station are about this conversation. Not just my show, but all of them. And the focus of that radio station is to dissolve all the walls of perceived separateness and to stimulate conversations where we are co-creating the new reality now. And so there's that, and then there's another website you might want to check out called iPeace. www.ipeace, ipeace.me, M-E. And the only reason I say that is because that's another place where you can witness thousands of people who have this awareness. And they're talking about it. It's kind of like a Facebook, but this is all they're talking about. It's not just, I got a friend, I got a this, I got a that. Oh, let me send you some flowers, and let's send some whales so that we can say, But iPeace is really cool. I interact with hundreds of people every day. Literally. In all different types of blogs, all different types of stuff, who are in this conversation. So that awareness. This is what I do for a living, like I said, and so I get to have this conversation all around. In teleseminars and in physical seminars and what have you. So that's what I perceive to be the planetary shift and change that's happening that I can perceive. And all I can do is sit in the moment-to-moment reality, seeking to transmute anything that comes to me, learning how to deal with every vibration. And that's what I do that's what I do. That's why I'm alive. That's what I do every day. So, you had a question back there. You still have it?
Well, one of the aspirations of humanity has been to somehow extend your physical or spiritual awareness or being, extend your life so you can continue to build on your experiences to find some kind of secret or, gain enlightenment or power in some way, call it immortality.
Yeah.
What's your take on immortality, and is it something worth pursuing, and what's your recommendation?
Yeah, well, the biggest issue is you believe you're alive.
Okay, I'm alive.
And this is getting into the 6th lecture as well. But I mean, in the sense that we believe we're alive, and we actually believe that we have individuated souls.
Well, how do you define an individuated soul?
Well, a soul that is reincarnating over and over and over and having experiences and growing and expanding. There's a belief. Big choice in words there. A belief. Because as far as I've experienced and other people that I've met who have died, when we talk, the very first thing to go, right, one of the very first things that you let go of is every description, every system, every way that you describe how life is that makes it make sense and give it meaning. That's the very first thing you let go of. And so, I mean, how much energy you want to put into that which you have to let go of? Or how much energy do you want to learn how to let go of it while you're still here? Because if there is a purgatory, it is the resistance of letting go of that. And that's what Buddhism is all about. You know, when they're meditating on all of the skulls in the cemetery, is to learn about death. Is to learn how to die before they die. To not have that fear, the fantasized event appearing real. And when you meditate and you're here now in the present, and you realize that you're not this body, you're not this mind, you're not any of that, then what are you? And I'll let you discover that. I have my ideas. So, just a second. He had one, and then you.
Real quickly, what is the name of the website that you can view these lectures on, and how many lectures are you going to be giving?
Okay. This is the third of 6. Okay. And the 2 previous ones are at Dr. Joe's Video. Dr. Joe's Video. I have business cards here. You guys can take them and have my website name on them. And then you can just go to my website, and you go to the multimedia area, go down to the bottom, Mind Control Lectures, click on it, and they're pretty high quality. You know.
Do you have an e-list or anything like that?
You know, that's a brilliant idea. I've done 3 lectures and have not taken an emailing list, you know. Someone told me I should pass a bucket around here. I mean, because this is how I make my living, guys, you know. I mean, what have you. And I wasn't charging you, and I didn't want to charge you, but someone said, you know, you should. Because it's like, so if someone wants to get a bucket and pass it around for me, cool, because I don't know. Go ahead, what was your question?
Would you say writing memories would help release you from those?
Yeah. His question is can writing down memories help to release them from you? Absolutely. It is absolutely. Absolutely. It's kind of like you got this hard drive that's full, and when you write them down on paper and get them out of your head, it's literally like cleaning off that portion of the hard drive so that now new stuff can go in there.
Does that work with typing it out as well?
Yeah. There's something about physically writing, though, that somehow so it depends generationally. It's really funny, because those of us who learn to express ourselves with pen more than this tend to need to do the pen thing. But then the younger generation who's been doing more of this than that tend to want to do it this way. So play with both of them. Now for myself, I found that each one does something different. So I do both. I'll write them down because I'm accessing the right part of my brain. I'm using my right hand, or left part of my brain because I'm using my right hand. And then when I transfer that to here, and I have to use both parts of my hand, both parts of my brain because I'm using 2 sides of my body and what have you, I have another experience. So I actually do both. But getting them out of your head, because also what happens when you get them out of your head is that when you're remembering them and what have you, you get a little fleeting thing here, and then that leads you to over here, to over here, to over here, to here, to here. And you get kind of just pulled around by different thoughts. But when you write it down, it's very concrete. You're getting it all out of your head, and you're focused, and you're not going to be traveling like that. And there's a whole series of exercises. The whole half of my book, okay, the first half of my book is about getting you to the realization that you're not your mind. That's the whole point. There's 7 chapters about how you're not your mind and how to realize that and how to work with it. Okay? The second half of the book, which is a whole other 175 pages, is what I call recipes for repeatlessness. How to turn your every waking moment into a conscious activity. So it's all of these exercises on how to do that. And they're just games that you can play. There was a workbook that we were working on that was a whole other 400 pages of exercises that you could do. You know? Oh, thank you very much. So, afterwards, if you feel so inclined to be on my email list, I'd love to keep you on that, and it'll be up here. Just real quickly, you know. You can pass it around. Thank you. One thing that's really important, for those of you who are aware that there are certain energies that are coming at us that want us to believe certain things about ourselves. And there's this thing called the Constitution that was written. And this thing in the Constitution is supposed to be like the rules about how we are and really what we are. And there's been a whole bastardization about those rules and stuff like that. And there happens to be someone in the room who happens to be phenomenal at helping to organize the reality of what all of that is and where you actually stand in it and what your rights actually are and how things have been bastardized and how you work within the system and outside of the system. And every Monday night here at Brave News Books, starting at 6:30 at night, there's something called Freedom School. Okay, years and years ago, when I became aware of this information back in the late 80s, it was called the Sovereignty Movement. Now we call it Freedom School. But Dr. James right here facilitates that class. And he has cards up here if you want information. And the brother's got the most comprehensive, profound resource center available on the planet that he's put together and offers all of us for free. So it's definitely something you want to look into. Have a conversation with him, pick up one of his cards, come to Freedom School sometime. Blow your mind. It does mine. He always asks me these trick questions. I'm just, yeah. And I thought I had a handle on this stuff, you know. Yeah. Well, yeah, you will have fun. He's very playful about it and very fun about it, and it's great. I mean, it's really, I mean, besides it being intense, yeah, I'm sorry if I characterize it as solely as, so mind-opening. But it's just very real, very down-to-earth, and playful, in that way. So I encourage you to check that out. Any more questions? Any more things that we want to do here? It is loved water. This is my recycled bottle. I mean, I used to use plastic. I don't anymore, so I just bought one of these. And this thing has been dropped on the sidewalk 2 or 3 times. Still working, Real quickly, I don't do this a whole lot. We got the book. We have the audio book. So the whole thing is me actually reading it. So if you like listening to that type of stuff, this is a huge project. There's 8 CDs in it, okay? But there's several different things here that I started something years ago called the Weekly World Meditation, okay? And I have world leaders in consciousness who did something exclusively for me. So there's nowhere else on the planet you can get it. But you got Ram Dass, you got Dr. Harold Bloomfield. If you don't know who he is, you should find out who he is. You've got 18 #1 best-selling books. He was the guy that... Dr. Harold Bloomfield. He's responsible for doing all of the research on meditation to get it out of the mystical, weird, ooh-ah-ah kind of thing that proved that meditation was like good for you in calming your neurology and reducing stress and what have you. So Ram Dass, Harold Bloomfield, John D. Martini, myself, and someone named Cynthia James. And there are 6 meditations on here that are programming for how to contemplate our planet and how to do all the things that we began to discuss here and that we've discussed in the first 2 sessions of this lecture. They're available on this CD, nowhere else. And they're specific. These guys are people who, this is what they do. This is all they've done their entire lives. They're devoted to it. If it's something you're interested in exposing yourself to, it's phenomenal. I mean, it's really, really good. And you don't have to listen to every single one in the same sequence, but it gives you the opportunity to sit in a space and contemplate reality maybe in a way that you had not. So that's that. I have something here called the Healing Garden. Okay? What I had was a heart attack. That's how I died. Okay? And as a result of my heart attack, I had 1/3 of my heart that was dead. I mean, dead. Wasn't coming back to life.
At what age?
6 years ago.
You're a young man.
Yeah. A hereditary thing, supposedly. It actually was a great lesson, and I wouldn't change it for anything. But the point is that a huge chunk of my heart was no longer going to work. Now, for years and years ago, one of my mentors, one of my early mentors, was a guy named Dr. Lee Poulos, P-U-L-O-S, for those that are taking notes. And Dr. Lee was one of the first mind scientists in the sense of trying to use our minds to heal ourselves. And he's the guy who did the research. For those who saw those who saw the previous videos about the monks, he's the guy that went and actually documented the story about the monks and the blankets. Right? He's the guy who created sports psychology. So in other words, in 1980, he took the Russian Olympic team and he did an experiment with them where they took every single team, they divided up into 4 different groups. They had one group that did only physical exercise, they kept up their normal regimen. Then they had another group, 25% mental, 75% physical, then 50-50, and then 75 mental, 25 physical workout, like they normally would do. Across the board, every single team across Winter and Summer Olympics who did 75% mental exercise and only 25% physical exercise won more medals than anybody else. And he's the guy who designed all that. Well, he taught me a whole series of exercises for regenerating your body. And it's what I used with my children throughout their entire life. They never saw a doctor. They got a cold, they got something going on, they cut themselves, whatever it was. We would use our mind to heal it. So they'd be having a fever, let's say 101 degrees, snot's coming out, they're coughing, they're feeling bad. We'd spend 15 minutes doing this visualization. They were fine. It's the same exercises and same types of ideas that I use to completely regenerate my heart, reverse arterial sclerosis, and rebuild other body organs within myself. And the techniques are on here. And it's done through a visualization exercise. And we just go through a little story and we go to a place, but there's certain things that you do during that story that activate certain parts of your brain that then regenerate your body. 100% money back guarantee. I mean, I'm alive. I was told I wouldn't be able to walk, that I'd be living in a chair, I'd be living in a bed for the rest of my life. That I'd never be, because I only had 2/3 of a heart left. Now they look at my heart and I'm just like, good job, guys. I mean, you know. So think about it. Each one of these CDs here today are only $10. Okay? Normally I think they're $18 at the website. Plus then shipping and handling. Basic meditation. If you don't know how to meditate, this is the basics. How to sit, how to breathe, how to focus, how to calm yourself, how to begin that process of getting to know yourself. This is the one of a series of 4. Then we have relationship affirmations. Now those, not all of you have seen my previous things, so I always have to recover or regroup. Buy 2, get 1 free. Yeah, that's what we always do. Buy 2, get 1 free. And so then we have take care, guys. Lastly, or 2 last things, in reprogramming ourselves. I mean, you can do this yourself. These are just resources, okay? So they're just resources. Sorry for the commercials. But this one's on weight loss and deals with the 7 areas in your life where excess weight occurs as a result of what you're thinking and how you think. Then we have relationships, whether you're in a relationship or you want to be in one. This is all of the 7 areas in life that you need to contemplate and reprogram, the beliefs that you've downloaded and what's messing you up and how to change them. And then this one is just basic ones that cover your entire life. All aspects. Financial, spiritual, vocational, relational, social, spiritual. So those are those. Thank you all so very much. I'm going to hang out for a little while. Have a beautiful night. Good night, everybody.